Hello everybody and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name is Serge.
And my name is James.
James, I mean, you shouldn't let certain things that are out of your control affect your mood is one of the things I always talk about.
Yep.
But I feel good today. I feel good
So you
today.
should, Mr. West Ham, save that for the Patreon Tottenham and
Yeah,
tomorrow's
I'm
podcast,
just saying,
please.
It's remarkable. I mean, we talk about to our correspondents. We talked about it after the correspondent week shows how a few new signings changes the mood all of a sudden, and then obviously yesterday was a stellar performance. It really, really does have an impact on your mood. Whereas the opposite, this is a segue. Whereas the opposite for you would be obviously being robbed by, I mean. Are they trying to challenge that Lucas Moura handball for the worst ever handball decision by chucking in another dozen or so ridiculous handball decisions?
Do you mean the Eric Dyer handball? Or?
No, I mean Lucas Moura from last season, in my opinion, is the worst handball decision ever, where he fell over and it hit his arm.
Oh, against Sheffield United.
Yeah. And now
I've forgotten about that.
Now they're trying to find and give even worse ones just to make that not the worst in history. It's People's Poll Day. If you hadn't guessed. From what I've just been rambling on about. Do you want to tell everybody the options and then we'll just get into this?
Yes, so there were three options. There was a clear winner. And the first thing I want to say about this is I put the poll out for this vote, the three options.
I didn't see that.
At 10:30 a.m. on Sunday morning. If the Tottenham game had happened before the poll, I wouldn't have even put it in the fucking poll because I'd just know this is all going to come off as sour grapes now probably, which is the last thing I ever want. So there were three options. One was the idea of taking a knee and if it should still happen before games. To be honest, I thought this would win the poll. It didn't have as many votes. Les Ferdinand made some very interesting comments last week. Basically, Queen's Park Rangers are not taking a knee anymore. What he wants is he believes it's now just become a bit like the kick it out slogan. It's become just a gimmick. It's become, we don't know why we're doing it anymore. He wants to see action. So I thought it would be really interesting to kind of debate both sides of that because Les Ferdinand makes some really great comments, but I think the message needs to go on as well. So
yep.
I think it's something we might come back for patrons. No fans until March. How do we feel and what the Premier League clubs are trying to do? Well, the Premier League clubs, I can tell you, are trying to force everything that can possibly fucking happen. And one of the reasons for that is because look around Europe at the moment, fans are going back in. Obviously, depending on where they are at various numbers, but in Germany, even in France, where the situation appears to be worse than ours in terms of cases and numbers, etc., fans are going back in. So the clubs are very much trying to fight it. I don't think they've got much of a leg to stand on, unfortunately, and I don't think we'll be back in possibly this season at all, to be honest. But what one is obviously the handball rule. The new rules, do we agree with them, was exactly what I wrote at 10:30 a.m. yesterday morning. So I feel like this is quite easy to conclude in terms of how we feel about them. We could just go, fucking hate them, stop the podcast. I kind of want to play devil's advocate with this a little bit to get a podcast out of it because I think it's very clear how everybody feels.
Do you know what the new handball rule is?
Yes.
Do you want to explain it to me?
Are you unaware or are you saying that just for jokes?
No, I thought they'd simplified it to make it easier for everybody to understand, to make it more black and white, because that was the issue. By negating accidental in any way, shape or form. Accidental no longer matters and the positioning of where the ball hits you on the arm and what have you has changed. But I think it would be good to get a real dictionary definition, let's say.
Okay, I can do that for you. I'm glad I was prepped, which I never normally am. So the first thing to say is armpit, which actually in the new ruling is good thing. So there is some sort of definition in terms of, yes, kind of draw a line. The fuck?
Yeah.
Which way do you call it? Sideways?
Say, Adam Pritchard, 3-5 years. Armpit line, not shirt sleeve line.
Armpit line. Suji's referring bitterly to the fact his team didn't get a penalty at Arsenal in game week 2, which in hindsight, seeing what I've seen given this weekend, I'm really not sure how you didn't get that penalty.
Exactly. It's the consistency is always what we come back to.
Now, what this has clearly done is it's made shoulder completely okay. So the Premier League released a video at the start of the season showing the kind of incidents that were given as penalised last year that wouldn't. They highlighted 2 incidents. Tyrone Mings away to Leicester, where he kind of dived into the ball, but it came off the top of his shoulder. It was given as a penalty. That 100% would not be a penalty now. And also highlighted the Mamadou Sakho disallowed goal away to Aston Villa, which also no one ever knows why that was given disallowed as a goal. In the video, they even refer to the incidents as shoulder, so you can make your own debate as to why they were fucking given last year or not. But we won't go backwards. So the whole armpit thing, I think, is decent. The idea that we've clarified now that shoulder is okay, even side, for the benefit of those on the YouTube, the side underneath your shoulder that is kind of above your armpit line is okay.
Yep.
Ruling in terms of terminology. Now, of course, with terminology, they have to make a fucking arse out of this. So bear with me if you don't understand any of this and dive in. For the purposes of determining handball offences, the upper boundary of the arm is in line with the bottom of the armpit. It is an offence if a player deliberately touches the ball with their hand, arm, including moving the hand, arm towards the ball. Deliberate.
Understood.
We're okay with that, yep.
No problem with that.
Scores in the opponent's goal directly from their hand, arm, even if accidental, including by the goalkeeper, if the goalkeeper comes up from a corner, right? So here's one I want to jump in and say this is really fascinating. So the goal that Chelsea scored to equalise at West Brom obviously came off Havertz's arm. I think we all understand that this time last year that would have been disallowed. It's come off him at sort of bicep area, if you like, right? But we also agreed it was completely unintentional. We all okay with that?
Yeah.
I don't think he's tried to grab the ball or cushion it. He's actually almost falling backwards when it happens, and it just kind of sits in between his bicep and his chest, and it drops. And then he lays it off. The interesting thing of this is the ball goes to Mason Mount, and Mason Mount shoots. Johnston saves. Abraham puts in the rebound. If Mount had scored, the goal would have been disallowed. This is at the point where we start getting...
We're talking a second phase of play type thing.
Basically, yeah. So then it's immediately gone to Mount. He shoots. So if Johnston, in his moment, is clever enough to know that ball's hit his hand, he should stand out the fucking way and take the chance and let the ball go in the goal. We are already doing something here that is completely immoral, in my opinion. The idea that the goalkeeper would be better off letting the ball go in the goal than attempting to save it. Because then from the save, Abraham can score. Okay, we could come back to that. After the ball was touched, there or a teammate's hand, arm, even if accidental, immediately scores in opponent's goal, creates a goal scoring opportunity. So that's what I've said. It's a really good case to refer to, is that one. Touches the ball with their hand, arm when the hand, arm has made the body unnaturally bigger. This is the one that's going to really hurt people. So unnaturally bigger for me is the penalty against Brighton on Saturday, as much as we were all like, oh my God, was the correct decision.
Yeah, it was a penalty.
Nobody has any debate about that at all.
Correct.
The ball comes over to Harry Maguire, and if you go like that, as you are leaning to head a ball, you are, in my opinion, causing yourself damage, right? You are lifting your... We're not saying... You can lean towards the ball like this, which is really difficult to explain on an audio, right? I'm kind of pushing my arms downwards to get a propeller force. You do not need to have your hand in front of your face. And that's basically what happened with Morpay. So I think we will agree with that unnatural opinion. I always generally think if you stretch your arms out sideways as far as they can go, if you lift beyond that point and are raised above your head, you're asking for it. That's the problem.
That's not to say that below shoulder length your arms are out, because you can still extend your body.
Oh no,
listen,
you can.
That's definitely
you can have your hand on the floor and it can be deliberate handball. Yes, I think we know the difference. What I always say is, if you go above your shoulder height with your hands or your arms, you're asking for trouble. So unnatural. The one that's caused a few issues is, to be honest, another Spurs one I'm going to refer to is a penalty we had against Man City in the Champions League a couple of years ago, where shot was taken from the edge of the area, I think by Sterling, and Danny Rose kind of dives at the ball to try and block it, and his hand, where you meant to put your hand when you're diving to, it's come above his body, and he hits his hand and it goes out for a corner, penalty given. I almost feel like I'd almost come to terms with that sort of thing being given, because it is, in sense, denying a shot at goal, for example. So as much as I disagree with that, from the sense that I don't know how you can avoid making your body bigger, I kind of come to peace with that one a little bit, for example. Not like the ones that we've seen over the weekend. The hand arm is above beyond their shoulder level unless the player deliberately plays the ball when then touches their hand arm. So this is the point we start reading it. And you're like, I have to fucking read this 4 or 5 times over. So hand in the ball. Touches the ball with their hand arm when the hand arm is above beyond their shoulder level unless the player deliberately plays the ball, which then touches their hand arm. So if it's deliberately played against them, it's okay, or you play it off yourself. Are we even clear on that? I feel like I've had to read that over 10 times over. And as Micah Richards said yesterday, I've read it 10 times over and I'm still not certain.
Yeah, sure.
We are muddying the water and making this more difficult for ourselves than need be. Okay. The above offences apply even if the ball touches a player's hand arm directly from the head or body, including the foot of another player who is close. The above offences apply even if the ball touches a player's hand arm directly from the head or body, including the foot of another player who is close. Now, the two that have really... There's a few penalties that have obviously really angered people. There's 4 that I think we can reference. The first one was the Lindelof one in game week 2, when Jordan Ayew's had the shot and Lindelof's running backwards, and it kind of... His arm wasn't even really... It wasn't like his arm was full stretched out. No. It was kind of in his body, but what you meant to do, run with your hands by your side. I mean, the obvious giveaway on that one is that literally Jordan Ayew and not a single Crystal Palace player appealed for that to be a penalty. It's laughable, right? Then there was the one given against Spurs in the Southampton game, where I think it was Gineppo tries to play it in between Winks and Doherty, and Winks, if you look back on it, has his arms completely behind his back, and Doherty's trying to kind of fend him off. The ball hits Winks' foot, goes up and hits Doherty's hand, which is outstretched away from his body. I get that. I mean, a lot wasn't made of it because Tottenham were 5-1 up at the time, so it didn't particularly matter. Didn't give a shit. I laughed when it happened, to give you perspective. Now, the 2 this weekend have really pissed people off because they have directly impacted potentially the final result of the match. Certainly that has happened in the Tottenham game. You could argue that Everton potentially would have won anyway against Palace, but it is the decisive goal in that particular match. So, Joel Ward, I mean, the look on his face, it kind of said it all, that he wasn't even angry. He was kind of laughing about it almost. He wasn't laughing, but inside he was like...
It's a joke.
What do you want me to fucking do, right?
Yeah.
I'm standing there. The ball's come. He's not going to win the header, so he backs off. And Dean heads the ball basically down at his hand. I'm not saying Dean did that deliberately, although we're going to start seeing this thing, by the way. And he can't go anywhere. He's completely flat-footed. There's nowhere to move. Imagine a goalkeeper when he plants his foot one way and then the ball goes the other way, and how many times you see them just stand still dead. Their body weight can't move. That's exactly what happens to Joel Ward. He can't go anywhere. There's nowhere to go. I feel like he even does try and fling his arm back to get it out of the way, and he just can't. And then the one yesterday in the Spurs game is laughable. And the reason it's laughable is because, and this is the scary bit, on the terminology that is written here, it's a penalty.
Yeah, I think with all of these, there's handball. The ball has touched someone's arm or hand somewhere that is deemed arm, below the armpit line. So they're all technically handballs. It's this accidental part of things that hasn't been clarified. And I just think that you can't give, like Eric Dyers yesterday, he's looking the other way. He's not looking at the ball, and he doesn't know.
He's gone up for a header. The ball's he's obviously can't win the header.
Yeah.
Carroll heads it downwards.
Yeah.
And as Dyer's falling backwards, having not won the header, it hits him on the back of the tricep, basically.
Yeah. Can you imagine a striker in the box suddenly one-on-one with a defender starts just couple of keepy uppies and then dinks it at the person's hand, he's going to get a penalty.
We are at the stage now. I spoke about the Champions League final, obviously the Mane Sissoko incident, and said
you felt he did it on purpose.
Yeah, but the one thing I always felt about that was, and I've said this all the time since, is that Sissoko had his arm out for like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Pointing out directly in a position where you go, okay, he's trying to tell his man to go with a runner. But at some point, mate, Mane's going to stand there and think, I'm going to kick the ball at your fucking arm if you keep just leaving it there. And I think that's what he does. That now wouldn't be a penalty, by the way, because it's armpit job, by the way. But I think that's one where there was a very clear case where a player identified gaining an advantage. Now, in that case, I wouldn't call that cheating from Mane or anything. I called it extremely clever, by the way. The problem what we've got now is, in the case that what happened yesterday, and there was an incident just before the penalty that was given against Tottenham as well, where they were also appealing for it. The problem with this is right now, and again, this comes back to the idea of it being immoral. Andy Carroll in that situation is better off trying to head the ball at Eric Dyer's arm from close range, which is quite easy, than trying to head the ball back across goal for a teammate to try and score. Mm-hmm. That is going to give him the benefit. Now we are going to get players screaming for everything and deliberately trying to kick a ball against somebody's arm. We are asking defenders to defend like fucking fish. That's what we're saying now. It's the only way.
We've had a lot of incidents in the first 3 game weeks, more than we would normally. I don't know if it's more or less than we would normally expect, but we have had a lot. Do you think it's going to carry on at the same run rate, or do you think it's just a freak occurrence that we've had so many in the first week that we're thinking about it?
So the data given on Match of the Day last night is quite interesting. So in the first 3 game weeks of last season, there were 8 penalties awarded in 30 games, none of which were for handball. Wow. So far this season, we've had 20 penalties in 26 games. So we've had 12 more in 4 fewer games, because we've got the 2 tonight and obviously the 2 postponed games from game week 1.
Yep.
6 of those were for handball. Now, there's certain one, like the Morpay one, I've got no issue with that. It's handball. It's handball. Crack on. Get on with it.
And there's so many more penalties, but then look at Leicester's penalties. They were all penalties yesterday, and none of them were handball. The
scarier thing that they also highlighted is this, and this is where fantasy football as well also becomes a complete farce. So, last season in the Premier League, there were 19 penalties given for handball. Essentially, 1 penalty every 2 game weeks for a handball.
Yep.
In La Liga, that total was 48. In Serie A, that total was 57.
Penalties for handball?
For handball. Not just penalties for handball.
Wow. And they had implemented the rule before us. Well, they had VAR before we did.
Now, here's the other thing, is to kind of come on, because the relevant of what's happening overseas is important. So, we have an issue in this country, I think, us as English people, British people, generally speaking, of ignorance. And ignorance in terms of it was originally our game, etc. We know best, etc. These guys have been dealing with this overseas for years, and I don't hear a fuss about it. Is it just us? If we just remove ourselves, are we living in this world where, I don't know, black and white isn't as important as right or wrong? I think right or wrong is more important than black and white. Whereas overseas, there seems to be an acceptance. It's your fucking hand. It's handball. Crack on. They seem to accept it because them laws haven't changed.
Is it to do with a slower pace of football? I'd like to see the style of these incidents.
Is it just us? I'd love to know, like, if there's people out there who support a team in the Bundesliga or Serie A or Liga or something like that. I'd love to hear from you and say to me, we accept this, we think it's okay. Or tell me that the way everybody in this country feels right now is right or wrong. I'm okay with that. Like, please tell me your opinion. Is it just us? Because when we go and play in European competitions, we accept this. We accept that referees are going to referee games differently, and we have to defend slightly differently because there'll probably be more free kicks given.
Is there more penalties with handball in the Champions League and the like, do you think?
I don't know the number,
data,
but I would. hazard a guess by the fact that we had Danny Rose against Man City in the quarterfinal and Sissoko against Liverpool in the final probably gives you a good indication that the answer to that question is probably yes. There probably are more. I don't know if those incidents would have been given. Those two incidents probably in the Premier League at the time, which didn't have VAR, would not have been given, right? So I'm not sure you can go that far back from a data perspective to analyse. You probably need last year's data, which I don't have in front of me. But I'd say probably per game, there probably is more handballs in the Champions League than what you would get in the Premier League, yeah.
Inevitably, I think you're right. We'll just start getting used to it. I feel quite numb about the situation is the best way I would describe it. Like, I don't like it. I don't like the way these penalties are given. I feel for the players where they're literally out of their control, but they're just giving up. Like, you guys lost 2 points yesterday. That could be pivotal towards the end of the season. And I don't want to sound bitter about Gabriel, although I am, but that could have been a point or two that saves us from relegation at some point. I just want to see consistency, but I don't feel like I want to get annoyed about it because I don't think it's going to have any impact, and I don't think the FA or UEFA are going to change the rules in any way, shape, or form.
Here's the thing: it's
not
all, it's
in
all,
the short term anyway.
It's all well and good for the likes of Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville to come out and be calling out FIFA, UEFA, whomever. I'm afraid I've got some bad news, and the bad news is that a lot of this is our fault. Mm-hmm. So, with IFAB, the International Football Association Board, essentially, a lot of people say, you don't understand because you've never played the game, etc. So I just want to kind of highlight some things that basically there is 0 point going and at in UEFA and saying UEFA needs to change the game, because like I said, at the moment, it feels like this is only a problem in the Premier League to us. Other people on the outside don't seem to think this is much of a problem. So, who are the members of IFAB? You've got Fatma Samora, who's a representative of FIFA. And then you've got Jonathan Ford, who's from the Football Association of Wales. Mark Bullingham, who's from the FA in England. Patrick Nelson from the Irish Football Association. And Ian Maxwell from the Scottish Football Association. Those are the 5 members of the International Football Association Board. 4 of them are from fucking Britain. So it's our fault. It's our fault that these things are getting passed off. So I looked into this a bit more. They also have football advisory panel and technical advisory panel. And some of the members on here who help, they help decide the laws of the game. There is involvement of former players. You'll recognise some of these names. Hidetoshi Nakata, who was a brilliant player for Japan. Mehdi Madavecchia, who you might remember scored for Iran against USA in 1998. Patrick Mbomo played for Cameroon. Luis Figo, Zvonimir Boban. There aren't players on here that we've never heard of here. So there's players from all kind of. There's women players on here. Cheryl Foster is a representative from the FA of Wales. So there's representative of former players across at elite level, lower level, women's game. They're all included as part of this decision making process. Then you've got the technical subcommittee, which also includes, and these are the 6 kind of final members. This includes Pierluigi Collina, who we kind of, most of us consider probably the best referee we've seen, and England won every time he reffed us. That was another slight influence on it. This also includes Neil Barry from the FA, Ray Ellingham again from the FAW, Crawford Allen from the Scottish Football Association, William Campbell from the Irish Football Association, and David Ellery, former referee in the Premier League, is a representative of the IFAB on that. David Ellery, fucking former Premier League referee, is at the heart of this. It's our fault. If we don't like these rules, then if you look further on into actually what the IFAB says, they either lie or they are in dialogue with clubs, and rules don't get passed off without people agreeing to them. So when Steve Bruce says yesterday, we need to make a stand together, which I'd love that, get all Premier League managers on a Zoom call and say, we won't fucking play by this, stop it now. That's what it needs, really.
Yep.
Someone from all of these clubs has let these new rules pass off.
Yeah, but you don't know how the rules are going to be interpreted till you see them in action.
So what I'm saying is,
because see, like, take the Dyer incident yesterday. Again, probably by the book, if the refs following the rules as they are, should have been given. But because he went over to the screen and had a look at it, right, I thought common sense might prevail.
Don't be silly.
I honestly felt like, you know what, okay, we've had a few random incidents here, but at least if the ref's going to go and have a look, they'll make the right decision.
That, different conversation a little bit, but going over to the screen, what's the fucking point of that? Well, we all know now when he goes over to the screen, he ain't changed his mind. Imagine the pressure. He's got the guy who's telling him in the truck in the background at Stockley Park or whatever, saying, yeah, mate, you should have a look at this because I'm pretty convinced that you're wrong. It's literally what he's getting told. Okay, go over and have a look at it. I think you've made what they meant to come into when there's an obvious error.
Clear and obvious.
Thank you, Suj.
Yep.
So the referee's getting told you should have a look at this, and as the referee's going over, he's thinking in my head, I'm being told to look at this because I've made a clear and obvious error. Oh, no pressure, mate.
Yeah, true.
As soon as they go over, it's obvious. I mean, that yesterday as well was laughable. The pain from a Tottenham perspective was right. So they've determined it's handball. Then they start doing the jiggly lines with the offside. Fine, that's all good. Then they asked the referee then to go and have a look. Why didn't they ask the referee to go and have a look while they was looking at the offside? We're wasting more time. So then we've got to watch the referee go over, and every single one of us knows what's coming. Yep. You think you've gone through all that just to, oh, by the way, yeah, we've checked the offside, everything, it's all good. Oh, do us a favour, go and have a look, mate. Yeah. His opinion's fucking irrelevant. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult to take on the pitch. And I mean, we haven't even talked about we've agreed that the Mope handball was a handball and should have been given, but the process behind it after the game had finished and the way the players were all just crowding, it just felt so surreal a little bit.
I can understand that because that's an incredibly unique situation in the sense that the referee's blown a whistle. The correct ruling on this, I replied to a few people and said, I don't think that if Ryan had saved it, the referee could have blown his whistle if it had dropped in the goal mouth. But actually, yeah, literally the law is if Ryan had saved it and palmed it straight back out, final whistle goes immediately.
That's it, done.
It's literally last kick of game. He either scores or misses. That's in the rules, so that's all fair enough. I think in that case, that also felt worse because that was also daylight robbery, the fact that Manchester United won that game. But in terms of the rules of what happened on the pitch, that was all above board and fine. The one that's really, the Dyer one has particularly annoyed people because exactly what you said.
He's facing the other way.
It's absurd, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's absurd that you could look at the Gabriel one against you where he does lean into it and then we're going, oh, is it under his armpit or not? Or he leans into it, whereas Dyer, I mean, just imagine jumping and then trying to jump and you've missed it and you're now going backwards. What are your arms going to do? Gonna fucking rotate like a fucking bird, right? There's no way around it. You can't avoid it. So that's why it's annoyed people.
Any thoughts on from a fantasy point of view? Because I'm not gonna lie,
I've got 5. I'm not sure that's enough.
I know for my Sky Overhaul team, I know I can afford KDB, Klitsch, Bruno Fernandes, Kane, Salah, Vardy. I can afford those 6.
Yeah.
I'm having those 6 penalty takers there, plus Van Dijk, and then I'll squeeze in whatever else I can.
I can understand that.
It's mad.
I can understand that. From the fantasy football perspective, I've always maintained I would never pick a player based on the fact that they take penalties. If you think that I'm not now considering Click because he's at a price point where he's comparable to the likes of Pereira and Souček, and I know that this fella's on penalties, am I beginning to think that way? Yeah, that's also incredibly sad, by the way. Now, I think Click, by the way, for reference, is potentially a very good FPL asset either way, as proven by his goal at Anfield. But that's wrong. And even we're talking about it like this, it's ridiculous.
I think from a fantasy point of view, we'll talk about it more on the main pod. I mean, I had a bang average week again. I did have a rank rise, but we're talking 100k when you're at 3.8 million or something. But it was in many ways a bad week, and in many ways it was not as bad as some that I've seen. I've had to really think about how are we going to come back from. I don't mind being in this situation from an FPL point of view where it's a climb, right? We've still got 35 weeks to play. It's going to be fun to climb back up, and I don't mind the challenge. But one of the things I'm really going to try and do is separate out my FPL football mindset and my love of football mindset. I'm going to stop watching football with an FPL hat on as much as I possibly can, because it just messes you up even more.
Right, welcome to my world. You'll be okay.
Yeah, I think it's like, we know as at 9 o'clock yesterday evening, I couldn't care less about FPL. Ask me what FPL points I had. I couldn't tell you. If Suchek's goal got taken away, and I started him, I don't care.
If I watched football and the first thing that went through my mind was fantasy football, I think I'd have to stop doing this podcast.
But what I might start doing is literally, say the Saturday morning 11 o'clock deadlines, and then just I feel like I'm not even going to bother logging back in until Sunday evening. Other than Sky, if I have to set my captain and all that, if I'm planning a transfer, but I'll just check out. I'll always have a look in the Correspondence League, see how other people are doing. That's all out the window now. I couldn't care less.
Why are you feeling like this?
Because the only way that I'm going to enjoy the next 35 weeks to get back to where I want to get to, which are top couple 100k or something, is if I start playing the game against myself and concentrating on my own team. Rather than looking at the bigger picture and listening to what other people are doing.
You're always better off doing that.
I want to try and now I really want to. So I'm setting myself the goal of, look, if I can score an average of 60 points a week between now and the end of the season, I'll have had a good season. So I'm going to set that goal within myself and look at players not based on ownership of what other people have and what have you. Just really try and play my own game against myself to get to a target that I want to get to. And not worry about.
So how many penalty takers you got at the moment?
That's a very good question. We're going to assume Werner is not a penalty taker.
I think we probably are going to assume he's not at the moment. Yes.
Yeah.
Although obviously it's worth saying Jorginho didn't play at the weekend. We think he might even leave before the window shuts, so we don't actually physically know who the penalty taker is at Chelsea. Possibly Ings. Yeah.
Antonio.
Yeah, you can have that
when he's on the pitch.
If Noble's not playing.
Zaha.
Yeah, we think so. You should be all right.
These are halves. Kevin De Bruyne.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh, you got 4. So I got 5. I've got De Bruyne, Ings, Wood. Who's my other forward? I've just put Raul Jimenez. Spoiler. Nice. Before the own goal, but the own goal doesn't hurt me.
Yeah.
Just so you know. And I've got Fernandes, who, when he wants to take it. I love that Fernandes said pre-game, he's like, if Rashford really wants to take it, then it's fine. I'll let him take it. Man grabbed that ball on Saturday. He weren't trusting anyone else with that.
Yeah.
Before we finish, I was messaging on WhatsApp with our good friend Tom Campbell at Utley TC last night on Twitter, and I just want to read out what you said.
You got his phone number?
Of course I do.
I want his phone number.
You can't have it.
Come on, Tom. Send me your phone number, bruv.
Tom's an attractive man. He only gives numbers to unattractive people.
Okay.
Footy-wise, the handball thing, he says to me, he says, I really hope it doesn't get trivialised. It's so sad. Football is a game, a passion, a form of entertainment at its core. It's love. But it's being turned into something forensic, something corporate, something you consider in a laboratory. When football becomes that, how long before fans bin it and find something more perfectly imperfect to replace it? There's a very, very simple solution to solving the handball rule, and it works like this. Keep your armpit rule in. Good. We like that. Unintentional handball is never, ever penalised unless it directly leads to a goal or stops a goal happening. That's it. That's all we need. We don't need in the case of yada, yada, yada. And let's allow our referees to interpret from themselves if they believe something is deliberate or not. I am absolutely certain that the referees, the clubs, nobody wants it the way it is, but they have all allowed it to get here, and we're all a little bit to blame.
Agreed with you on that.
Except the fans, because we don't get a fucking say.
No. Yeah, a bit of a somber morning, guys, off the back of a potentially somber weekend. I don't know how your FPL teams did, but that's the whole point of the game. And we're going to keep soldiering on. Tomorrow, we'll be back at you with a full rundown of the weekend's fixtures. We still have Fulham, Aston Villa, and obviously Liverpool, Arsenal this evening to go. And as soon as those games are done, we'll be back with a full review. On Wednesday, we'll be looking at Sky Fantasy Football. Only one more game week and 2 match days until we can all start tinkering with the overhaul, which I'm looking forward to a little bit, although I feel like I could be 80 to 90% already there. And then on Thursday will be, we just talked about Thursday, Clash of the Correspondents. Who do you have on this week?
Adam Hockcroft, Dan Lord, Villa versus Liverpool.
Nice. And then on Friday, James will be live streaming any questions.
Reading
that you
out funny
may...
names. I'm only reading out first names now.
It's becoming a bit of a thing, isn't it?
I'm getting stitched up, but it's funny.
Yeah, there we go. Guys, COVID's on the rise. Stay safe. Wash your hands. Hope you enjoyed your weekend. We'll be back at you soon. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Be nice to each other. Cue music, please, man child.